I'm going to explain World of Warcraft as I understand it so far. World of Warcraft, when it comes to dishing out damage, if you have excess rage, you always want to be using your abilities to keep up your battle shout only whenever it gets low. You want to hit him with the thunderclap, so that way he starts doing damage less. Slam him with Sunder Armor since it's instant instead of waiting for Heroic Strike, which takes way too long and also uses up a slot where you could be doing something else. And always have your DPS, your dots. You always want your dots. First thing I do whenever I get into a fight is I will slam him with charge to get up rage. Then I'll hit him with rend, which is going to allow me to instantly start doing damage. I hit him with any ability like overpower that is on a per use basis, and then I just slap him with Sunder Armor. The reason I use Sunder Armor is because it increases the potential damage that I could do instead of increasing the amount of damage I'm doing at that time. Since if you try to use Heroic Strike, it takes a long period of time before you're actually able to do any damage, since the fact that it waits for your next auto attack. Yes, it might be good if you're using it dual wield, but if you're using a single hand or a two-hander like this, it takes forever to swing the sucker. Even with plus 3% attack speed, it still takes forever. It's better to use your auto attack and go about using other abilities that are more instant to use. Abilities that allow you to instantly get damage off or counter an ability, etc, etc, etc. Now, you shouldn't be saving rage for literally anything. It's completely ridiculous. I don't know what level you'd start saving rage, but for now, use abilities when you're able to use your abilities, you know? Always the main three I do, freaking rend, demoralizing shout, so I no longer am taking an insane amount of damage. I repop my dots, then I use thunderclap, because demoralizing shout is 10 rage, thunderclap is 20, so it takes longer to use thunderclap, and I'd be waiting so long for him to be attacking less. Instead, I could just decrease the amount of damage he's doing for how many times he's attacking. It seems to be, I mean, it works out. The only problem you're ever going to run into in World of Warcraft is when you're fighting multiple freaking people. You know, when you're fighting 5 or 6 enemies at once, what do? You could use Thunderclap, but it only does so much damage. I'd say use Demoralizing Shout, Thunderclap, tab through and use Rend. I know it's not the best, but again, I'm new. And this is just the game as I understand it so far. And always focus one enemy at a time. You know, the one with the lowest health, always focus it. I use Cleave if there's two, so I can get that big damage on both of them since I'm only allowed to focus one at the time. Now, he's going to be doing a lot of damage to me here, so I have to make sure I have Demoralizing Shout and I have my dots up. Always keep your dots up. Demoralizing Shout, got to keep that up. Next is go is going to be Thunderclap, but I don't want to lose my Battle Shout. I'm going to hit Thunderclap preemptively, and then I'm going to Sunder Armor once, okay? I didn't need to Sunder Armor. I could have used Heroic Strike and ended it right there, but it's over. It's per fight. Depending on what happens, depends on how you would adjust to that fight. Now, at level 30, you can go do the quest for the Whirlwind Axe. I chose the sword since it just made sense at the time. Everyone chooses the axe. That's not me being facetious. Everyone chooses the axe as I know it. The only reason I chose a sword is because if you go to your abilities, fudge. I think it's on the next page. Okay. Sword specialization. It's a racial passive. So skill with swords and two-handed swords are increased by 5. So, I mean, I saw that as a plus and I decided to get the sword instead of the axe. People still use the axe. It's so slow to attack. You could freaking go take a nap in the time that it takes to attack with the axe. Yet its potential damage is so much higher. I know I keep saying potential damage. I don't really know any other way to phrase it. It has a higher threshold for damage, right? So it attacks slower, but you could hit a higher crit than another weapon like my sword. Now, usually whenever people first start off, you want to go into Fury. However, when you get to your two-handed weapon, I've been told that people like to respec into arms since you can use, you can buff your two-handed weapons. You also, people say to get Mortal Strike since it's probably the best ability that you could possibly freaking get. I've stuck with Fury for a couple of different reasons. I really like these two abilities right here. Enrage, Flurry, and... Yep, that one right there, Unbridled Wrath. Plus, the improved Battle Shot helps a lot. Dual Wield Specialization, because eventually I'm no longer going to be using this two-handed weapon. You know, it's great and all, but eventually I'm going to be dual wielding. Why? Because I'm able to hit faster. I'm able to already have those buffs. You know, the reason I haven't respec'd and the reason I've kept what I've done, it's not because I don't have money. I've got plenty of gold from getting lucky with rare drops and such. The reason... Oh, I don't need to be killing Sorrow Spinners, do I? Okay. The reason I haven't respect is because there's no real reason to. Your talent points don't really affect you that much at level 35. They do affect you. No, there's no lie to that. But it's not... It doesn't change much. I respect 3 or 4 times before I went into Fury. Arms, I had it first, and I used a two-handed weapon. It just didn't do much. When I respec'd into Fury, I noticed a lot of differences. I had more rage, which was a big issue. It was a really big issue. I would get into fights and I just wouldn't have rage, and it was so annoying. Ooh, iron. I hated it. I hated getting into a fight and not having rage. Also, the amount of time it takes to attack, and you can also increase the amount of time that it takes, or decrease the amount of time that it takes in between attacks if you spec into Fury and you go down with Flurry Strike or whatever. Of course, it depends on whether or not you can hit a critical attack, and yes, you would be doing more damage if you hit a critical attack, because after that, it increases, etc., etc., etc. It's very important to understand when playing World of Warcraft. You just need to pay attention and adapt. You can't just sit there and do what everybody says World of Warcraft players are known for. Sitting back, playing the game, chillaxing. Yeah, it's fun, but at the same time, if you're just paying just a little bit more attention, you'll realize that what abilities work, right? I used to think Shield Bash was the coolest ability ever, right? But I realized that a shield really inhibits you a lot. You attack extremely slow like a two-handed weapon with a one-handed. It's not as slow, but it'd be better with the two-handed, because with the two-handed weapon you could now do more damage faster. The shield increases your armor and everything else like that. Yeah, it might take longer for you to die, but early game, man, honestly, it sucks. It doesn't help you at all. I hated having a shield. I needed damage. I needed to kill it faster, because the more enemies you have, you just can't put out enough DPS at such an early stage. You just don't have the abilities for it. It's stupid. Just run with a two-handed weapon or two, just dual wield. It's cold season right now, man. It's hard as hell to breathe. Every year. I'll tell you one thing, man. Just pay attention. Like, right there, I didn't have my battle shout, so I wasn't doing as much damage as I could have been doing. You know? I'm not an expert at this game. You know, look, I'm not using up all my rage. I'll just tell you one thing, man. If you just pay attention, pay close attention to what you're doing at all times, always make sure you're using your rage, you won't fail. You know, you'll be able to succeed a lot of the time. You'll be able to dish out more damage. You know, just be aware of what's around you. Always take the roads. I think what I really wanted to say throughout this entire video is just pay close attention to how you use your ability and what order you use your abilities and why you're using the ability in the first place. Like, why did you originally decide that that's the ability you wanted to use, right? So I'm using Sunder Armor right now. Earlier, I was using his heroic strike. There's a couple different reasons why you want to use heroic strike. Now, this is actually extremely important. If you're fighting a higher level enemy, your auto attacks don't do enough damage. They don't, not at all. But if you use heroic strike, it greatly increases the amount of damage you're doing. Not how you'd normally do damage to the same level or a level beneath you, but it would greatly increase the amount of damage that you're able to do against that enemy, right? Say you're doing 86 damage or even 16 damage per hit, right? On like elemental or something like that, right? You're just doing crappy damage. Say you're doing like you're fighting a raptor and it's 14 levels higher than you. You just can't seem to do damage. You can't build rage. You can't hit your auto attacks. You're always missing. Well, there are some things that you can do. Heroic strike, when it hits, it does a crap load of damage. I mean, a hell of a load of damage. You go from 16 to 108. That's a lot. That's a big difference of damage. But the problem is rage. You can use blood rage, which takes 100 health, but it gives you 10 rage. It's not much, but you could grab your demoralizing shout, battle shout. I don't recommend demoralizing shout though, because if he is such a high level, he's just gonna freaking dodge it, or it's gonna miss constantly, and you're gonna be sitting there with your finger up your arse, not wondering what the hell you're doing. I'd have to read this. Some other things to note. Once you hit 40, you got to get a mount, right? So you want to be saving up now. You got to save up at least 100 gold to get a mount. That's a lot of gold to save up. It really is. Also, some choices in weaponry. So if you're a blacksmith and you are able to get a hold of the plans, you can make something called the Frost Tiger Blade. This is what it looks like right here. This weapon's pretty expensive to make. You have to be level 35. And it kicks ass. It increases your your chance to get a critical strike by 1%. Chance on hit will lost a frostbolt, slowing the enemy down for 50%, and also over 5 seconds. Yeah, baby, that's right. It's pretty good. It doesn't hit very fast, but it can do a lot of damage. Of course, it's not as good as this weapon right here, because my whirlwind sword, man, 82 to 124 damage. That's a lot, right? It also hits faster, 2.90 instead of 3.40. Mine does 35.5 damage per second. It does 28.8 damage per second. That's not what's extremely important to understand. What's extremely important to understand is my whirlwind sword gives me plus 12 or 14 stamina and plus 15 strength. The strength is good on its own, but the stamina is where it really comes around. The stamina gives me a bunch more health. If I took that sword off, I don't want to put that one on because I'm trying to sell it. I go 1-4-19. I put my sword back on, 1-5-59. That's a lot more. It's a lot more health, and it really does help. A polearm is pretty good though. Polearm gives like 100 something armor, other stuff.